So welcome to A Heart-Led Humanity. My name is Carolina Grace, and this is our sacred space where we host conversations with existing heart-led pioneers to demonstrate what else is possible for the future of humanity when we first live through the lens of our heart before integrating with our head. So our heart is like our new operating system, that then the head is in service to the heart's guidance and wisdom. And I see our heart as having two elements: our compassionate natures, our human compassionate natures, and of course, our sacred portal to the divine, our instant resource, our access point. So these conversations are designed to inspire reflection as to what else is possible for all of us when we live on a daily basis from this space. And today I have the great pleasure of inviting somebody that I've known for a few years now, and she never ceases to astound me with her wisdom. Her name is Sophia Mona Lisa, and she has numerous titles, one of which is an alchemical creation high priestess, a shamanic high priestess, and she is also the creator of the Golden Ray Center, which is a temple dedicated to sovereignty and sacred relationship. And as part of her work, she was invited to be by the Sophia, the divine feminine, and divine wisdom, to start a New Earth galactic project, which is a quite phenomenal means of activating light codes across the planet, and as a result, our divine DNA, activating the strands at the same time. And this is a mammoth project, hugely inspired, and all credit to Sophia Mona Lisa. She has been engaged in this work since the beginning of the year, and she will be sharing this information with us amongst many other things. But my particular interest in inviting her to have our conversation, our heart-led conversation today, was the fact that she is bringing about the foundations for our heart-led humanity. She's supporting the emergence of the essential elements to support humanity live through our hearts on a daily basis and create our new paradigm. So we had a few problems before we started this particular conversation, so I'm not as fluid as I might have been half an hour ago. So you'll forgive me for a few hesitations there, but I'd really like to welcome you, Sophia Mona Lisa, to our conversation today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Caroline. It's an honor to be here. Yes, we've known each other a few years, and when you told me about this organization that you've founded, I was really impressed. And of course, I've listened to the interviews that you've done with your other guests and just found them so inspiring. So to be able to stand in their company is a huge honor and a huge pleasure. And I appreciate you inviting me onto the show.
Oh, that's incredibly kind of you. I'm very generous. Thank you. So there will be many things that I've missed out, including the Rosewell Mystery School that you've also founded as part of the Golden Ray Center. And you have this amazing, long, illustrious list of titles and abilities and qualifications and wisdom that you bring to us as a race. What would you like to share with the audience for them to know a little more about you, where you've come from, what your journey has been to bring you to this point? What would you like people to know about who you are and why you're doing what you're doing?
Well, thank you. So first of all, I would say that the titles don't really matter.
They're very impressive.
You know, that's what the third density Earth community requires, right? You've got to have some kind of credentialing,
absolutely,
so that their egos can be soothed and consider you to be, you know, an authentic authority in your field. And I'm not sure any of us are real authorities in any field. But, all of the credit actually does not go to me. It goes to the Sophia Christ Consciousness, and it goes to the Magdalene and Yeshua. And so the reason I say that is because all of this work for me started in 2019. And of course, I've always been on a spiritual path, and I always was doing spiritual work, but my work took a tremendous shift in its trajectory from a trip that I took to southern France, to the Cathar region, where there is a landscape Venus temple near Rennes-le-Château. And while we were there, we hiked up a mountain in Rennes-les-Bains, which is a little village right next to Rennes-le-Château, also in the landscape Venus temple, to sit on a 5,000 plus year stone chair that has been known as the seat of Isis. So we each got to have some time in the chair. And when I literally had to climb up onto the chair, just to give you a sense of its immensity, because I'm about 5'2". I don't know what that.
Yeah, I would say about 162 and a half or something like that. I'm the same.
Yeah, so I'm not very tall. So I had to climb up to get into the chair, to sit in the chair. But as soon as I got into the chair, I was immediately transported into a different reality. And I saw the most incredible colors that you would not see here in this 3-density earth. And I was very aware that I was undergoing a multi-dimensional attunement. I could sense that through each of my chakras that was going on. And what I recall is that when I was being invited to come back so that the next person could take their turn, it was really challenging for me because I was in such an expanded space.
Yes.
To try to come back into my body, to try to open my eyes and have my physical eyes function again. It was a life-changing event. And as I said, I knew that something monumental had happened, and the full extent of what happened has been unfolding since that time. And that's the path that has developed into the work that I've been doing since then. But it all started there.
And it was quite dramatic for you, wasn't it, subsequently, because it brought on a huge health crisis that nearly killed you on your way back.
It absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. In fact, I can remember laying in the hospital. Really, I thought I was going to die. And I remember in my mind talking to the divine, God, goddess, whatever you call that greater power, and saying, okay, if this is it, I'm ready to go. And so I've just made peace with it, and you can take me.
Yeah. So do you think that was a healing crisis to clear your energy field for what was to come through?
Yes, because the energies that I was in at that time were such a high frequency. And of course, you know, our nervous system is an electromagnetic system. And you know that if you, just simple example is if I'm coming to Europe and I need to bring some kind of a power converter, because if I plug something in from the United States,
you'll frazzle yourself.
It's gonna, right? It's a similar kind of thing. The circuits get basically blown out. And so everything that needed to get blown out, for lack of a better word, in order to facilitate my body's capacity to allow that energy, those frequencies to run through it, I believe that healing crisis was the process of that unfolding.
Yeah. And so often we label these things, don't we?
Mhm.
As, why did this happen to me, et cetera, et cetera. Because this went on for you for, what was it, almost a year?
It was, yes, it was almost a year. I mean, the first 6 months were really challenging. My vocal cords were paralyzed, and so my entire voice was altered, and it sounded like I couldn't talk, and it sounded like trying to talk was painful. From other people that were reflecting that back to me, does your throat hurt? How difficult is that? So a lot of transmutation
Mm,
in my physical body had to filter through from all of that energy that came through. And yes, the first 6 months were extremely challenging. And it was probably, as you recall, up to a year before
yeah.
I started to kind of feel like I was getting back to, well, we normally say our old self, but really
The new self.
coming into my
Yeah.
new self.
And it was huge testimony to you, because I was very worried for you at some point. I kept checking in over several times, because I couldn't believe that you could keep going living on your own with animals, etc. So huge kudos to you for actually plowing through such isolating and difficult, challenging physical. I mean, the commitment in just keeping going. It's just phenomenal.
Thank
So
you.
yeah. So what came through for you, from what came to you and through you as a consequence?
Well, a couple of things that showed up right away. At the time that we were in France, Venus was in the Inanna underworld. And I knew a little bit about the Venus synodic cycle, not a whole lot, had not worked with the Venus synodic cycle. Fortunately, my roommate through the whole journey, she's in my priestess lineage. We had never met before. She lives out in Washington State. So this was our first meeting. She knew a lot more about what was going on with the Venus synodic cycle and being in the Venus Inanna underworld. And so the entire trip.
Would you like to just to explain to the audience what is the Venus synodic cycle?
So every planet has a synodic cycle, and it's basically a relationship between its orbit and the sun. And so with the Venus synodic cycle, it takes Venus 8 years to actually make a complete rotation. And as it makes that complete rotation, it makes the image of a rose in the sky.
Yeah.
Which is why from very ancient times, the rose is associated with the sacred feminine. Mm. And at the very center of that rose, you can see the 5-pointed star, the pentagram. Another reason why people may remember this from the Da Vinci Code movie, why the pentagram is an ancient symbol that represents the sacred feminine. So as it's moving from one point to the next in the 5-pointed star, it's a 19-month cycle to go from one point to the next, And that culmination
8 years.
of the 5 points at 19 months, each is 8 years.
Yeah.
So, and in that 19-month cycle, as it's going from one point of the star to the next, there are 4 phases. So you have what's called the morning star phase. This is when you see Venus in the morning star. They call that the descent journey. Then Venus descends into the Inanna underworld. That was the phase that we were in when we went to France. Then Venus shows up in the evening star. That's called the ascent journey. And then she morphs into the next goddess, which is defined by the astrological sign that she's working through at the time that she starts the 19-month cycle. And so she gets morphed into the next goddess archetype to begin the next 19 months. So those are the 4 phases.
And at this point, sorry to interrupt you, I very erroneously forgot or overlooked to introduce you as a skilled astrologer.
Well,
so yes, you have this amazing wisdom, but yes, you also place it in the context of astrology, which is how we met originally in terms of your gifts.
well,
Some of your
and
gifts.
thank you. And you know, I don't know how skilled it is in terms of, you know, I didn't study with these great astrologers. I didn't take all of these astrology classes. I was always very from very little, always very interested in astrology. It was a way that my mind could try to make sense of what I was experiencing in the world, but I couldn't do anything with it. So I was always relying on other people. And then what happened is Neptune, who is the ruler of Pisces, made its ingress into Pisces. And where that happens in my chart is in the 8th house, which is the house of your power. It tells you how you stand in your power, how you give your power away or allow it to be siphoned off. But what I discovered is it also shows you how you can activate your own superpower. And so when Neptune moved into Pisces in that area of my chart, it was like the cosmos gave me the Rosetta Stone for astrology. And all of a sudden I could look at charts and understand things about charts that I could have never interpreted before, that people that I was sharing with had never heard about themselves in terms of astrology readings before.
Yeah, you are very gifted. You clearly have a direct line. And the clarity with which you explain things is phenomenal. I mean, I've met many astrologers over the years, and that's why I was so impressed with you. And I'm sorry we're diverging, but it makes it very interesting.
Okay. It all ties in together, because I use that as my shamanic tool to do all of this other work.
Yes.
And it's interesting that you describe that phenomenon about your experience with other astrologers, because for me, what I figured out is happening is that my higher self, you know, that which we call our soul, that extension of the divine creator, is actually using those symbols to communicate with me. And so I'm actually translating not so much from the symbols, but from what I'm receiving at the higher. And so what's happening is, like when I'm reading for you, your soul is communicating what you're ready to receive to my soul, and then my soul is translating that to me.
And that's so clear. That's so clear during the readings. It's like going to a completely new level in terms of experiencing what your chart is sharing with you in that moment.
Yes.
So you do have a gift.
Well, thank you. As I said, because it was activated in my 8th house, I call it my superpower. And everybody has their own superpower. I mean, it took many, many, many years for my superpower to be activated. But it does. We all have our own superpower, and in the right timing, divine timing, it does get activated. So as I was saying, when we were in France, we were in that Inanna underworld phase. And so it made the entire trip to France completely different than what any of us had expected. And I can remember.
So share with us, what is it to be in the Inanna underworld?
Well, when you're having an underworld experience, it is a shamanic death and rebirth experience. That's what it is.
So perfect context for yours. Yes.
Exactly. And so, you know, we're thinking we're going to go to France and we're going to eat great food and drink great wine, and we're going to see all these fabulous places associated with Mary Magdalene, and it's going to be lovely. And from the beginning, I mean, from the get-go, it was like, oh, and I can remember saying on several occasions, I did not pay $5,000 to come to France.
I want my money back. Oh dear. You see, the problem was you told God your plans. He was having a laugh. Yes.
But I didn't know we were in the Inanna underworld. And of course,
Wow.
everything that we were experiencing was an underworld experience.
Yes.
And it was intense, so intense. And what made it even more intense is not only was Venus in the underworld, Venus representing the sacred feminine principle, Mars was also in the underworld, Mars representing the sacred masculine principle. And that was a unique experience because Mars and Venus are only in the underworld together simultaneously once every 34 years.
Wow.
So the
You
fact
picked it.
that this trip was planned,
Yes.
and it all came together. I don't think that there was a conscious, we're going to do it here because that's when that's happening.
Yeah.
The fact that it all unfolded at this precise timing when we would be in the Inanna underworld, when Mars and Venus would be in the underworld together, the intensity of those energies through that pilgrimage really was life altering.
Wow. Yeah.
For all of us. So there were 7 of us plus our guides, so 8 of us. It was, I can't even find words still.
Yeah. And was this when you were asked by the cosmic Sophia to start the Galactic New Earth Project? Was this the time?
No, actually, what happened when I came back from that trip and started to come into my new body is she inspired me to start teaching sacred feminine classes related to the Venus synodic cycle. And then what happened, this is interesting, further up that mountain where we sat on the seat of Isis is another 5,000 plus stone seat. They call it the seat of Osiris. And for whatever reason, which probably gratefully did not happen at the time, it might have been an overload, we did not go further up the mountain to see the seat of Osiris. But while I was teaching these sacred feminine classes, I was inspired to get our group together on a Zoom call to make a journey to the seat of Osiris through the etheric realm. And that was phenomenally powerful. And then what came out of that is I started teaching sacred masculine classes.
Because is it true that as Isis represents the cosmic Sophia and the Osiris is the Yeshua or the Christos?
Well, and so this is what I discovered is that in Egyptian times, they worshipped Isis as Sophia, as divine wisdom. And some people may be familiar with Sophia from the Bible because the book of Solomon, the Songs of Solomon, are songs to Sophia. A lot of the Western culture has lost the knowledge about Sophia, who is the beloved of Christ, whereas in the Eastern nations, the ones that have the Eastern Orthodox religions, they still very much know who Sophia is and continue to honor her. So when I discovered that Isis was known as Sophia, and in fact, there's a famous statue called the Veiled Isis, which represents the Veiled Sophia. Well, that's when I got the download. Oh my goodness. If Yeshua and Mary Magdalene are sacred partners, are beloveds, and Sophia and Christ are beloveds, sacred partners, well, then it makes sense that if Isis represents Sophia, who is Isis's beloved? Who is Isis's sacred partner? Osiris. Osiris represents the Christ energies. And the thing about it is a lot of people attribute Christ consciousness to Christianity. But, they don't have the, what do you call it? They don't have the ownership of Christ just because, it's called Christianity. And so that was a huge breakthrough that I received. And that's why when I do astrological readings, I use the asteroids, Isis and Osiris, to show for people where their soul alignment with the cosmic Christ and the cosmic Sophia are showing up and supporting them and interacting with them.
Yes, absolutely. And just a little complete digression here. You've just completed an interview around the significance of the 9/11 event.
Yes.
Looking at it from the astrological and the more profound words, you can explain this better than me, but the actual meaning on an esoteric level, as well as the actual, malevolent perspective.
Right.
So I would encourage people, I will put the details of that in the comments below for people, but that was quite astounding.
Well,
so I just want to signpost the fact that you do this in amazing ways with you pulling together different things that other people may not do.
Right. And of course, humanity as a whole, because while it happened here in the United States, I really feel like it was a global traumatic event.
Yes.
And so from my perspective, and I think I mentioned this at some point, either in that video or the interview that I did on the Truthathon with Lewis Harms, I talk about how the one thing that, the dark forces don't count on is that the divine uses absolutely everything or it's in service to its divine will. Yeah. And people will kind of be able to relate to this because it kind of seems like when all the crappy stuff happens, that's the stuff, right? That's the fodder. That's the fertilizer for what the divine
comes next
in service to its divine will. So that was kind of the perspective I was taking is, yes, this was a horrific global traumatic event. Yes, it was very nefarious in nature, but how is the divine will desiring through the wisdom of Sophia, divine wisdom, to use that event in service to itself for the awakening of humanity? So that was kind of the perspective I took.
And very much as is happening at the moment with all the crises happening globally on all levels at this juncture.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everything that's happening on a global level is in some way waking up the masses because, we've been a community on this earth for, thousands and thousands of years. We won't go into what that real time period is. And we've been kind of sequestered here as a community on earth, but and we've been divided up in communities on earth, but it's time in humanity's ascension. It's time in humanity's expansion to, one, become a unified community here on earth, because we're getting ready to step into a galactic community.
Yeah.
And we cannot step into that galactic community until we as a humanity globally become one global community. And
absolutely,
so these different world events are helping humanity to, come together in a way that unfortunately they haven't been able to, humanity hasn't been able to in the past. And it's sad that it takes all of this trauma to make it happen, but it goes back to the divine will uses everything in service to manifesting its desire.
Absolutely. And that's why we're shifting from our head as our operating system to the heart.
Exactly.
And that's why unity consciousness requires us to see ourselves as a global community, and all the labels and the separation that is being encouraged for us to assume and take on at the moment are just trying to distract us into away from that potential.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So I want to come
back to France.
well, I want to come back around to the question that you asked me about when did I receive this message from the Cosmic Sophia about this galactic project.
Yes.
So I was teaching the Sacred Feminine classes. They were aligned with the last Venus synodic cycle, which was a Gemini goddess cycle. And as we came into the fourth and final phase of that cycle, that metamorphic phase where the Gemini goddess was getting ready to morph into the goddess on the stage, now the Capricorn goddess, in that time period, which is a very short time period, that final phase, that's when I received the message from the Sophia. And when I received the message, I had been feeling already for several months, something huge is getting ready to birth through me. I'm not going to be able to continue with these Sacred Feminine and Sacred Masculine classes, as I was already had talked to my students and we were wrapping that up and bringing it to a close. And I didn't know what was going to show up next, but I knew it was going to be huge. And then I got this invitation from Sophia. And when I first received the invitation, I understood that what she was asking me to do was going to be aligned with this first phase, the descent journey, the first phase of the next Venus synodic cycle, which was starting in January. And that was the piece that I got. I didn't get like the whole picture. It's like when you're,
oh, come on, don't be greedy.
It's like
that's not how it works anymore. It's just the next step.
Right, exactly. It's like when you're teaching somebody how to bake a cake. You don't say, you know, here are all the ingredients. Now this is what you do. You say, first you get out the flour and you measure the flour and maybe you have
focus.
You know, right. It's like
Master.
Step by step. Exactly. Yes. And so it was probably in April or May that I started to receive the next part of what was going to happen. And I'm so grateful that I wasn't given the big picture in January, because I'm not sure I would have been able to make that huge leap of faith.
Yeah.
But the little piece that I was given was like, oh, okay, I can do this.
Do that. Yes. Yeah, perfect. I mean, and isn't that the new, that is part of our new Heart's operating system. We just receive the inspiration for the next step that is ours to do.
Exactly.
We focus on it, we master it, and then we will receive the next one.
That's exactly right. It's exactly right. And so when you can allow yourself to turn off the lower mind, right?
Yeah.
Because you've got to turn it off in order to drop into your heart space. And dropping into your heart space requires a deep embodiment of trust. And know, okay, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing at this time. And I'm being guided step by step. And when you have that deep trust, then you know, because you not only do you receive the guidance, but then for me, I'm sure other people experience this too, I received then validating messages that yes, I got the guidance, I understood the guidance, that's what, and it shows up in several different ways, kind of reaffirm, yes, you're on the right path, you're doing exactly what we're asking you to do.
Yes, and it's tapping into affirming and confirming our inner knowing so that we build the trust muscle.
Yes, exactly. Because, you know, I keep pointing to my heart. We're talking about a heart-led humanity. The heart is the seat of the soul.
Yes.
And when you think about, you know, the universe, the multiverse, whatever, it's a hologram. And so our souls as extensions of that absolute creator are fractals of that hologram. So for me, the divine is the Sophia Christ consciousness. If my heart space is the seat of my soul, and my soul is a fractal of that Sophia Christ consciousness, then I have an indwelling Sophia Christ consciousness here. And that's what's guiding me through my heart. And so this is the place that humanity has come to, is that divine spark within our heart is being ignited so that people are beginning to have personal relationships with their own inner Christ, with their own inner Sophia, communicating through their own inner Sophia Christ consciousness and creating from that space.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but we've moved from the age of Pisces, which is the era where we look to external teachers like Christ and Buddha and external authorities to tell us what to do, into the age of Aquarius, where it's about self-guidance. It's about looking inside.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And really, in terms of the timing of all of that, this current Venus synodic cycle, this Capricorn goddess, she is the sovereignty goddess. You know, you have got to be able to reclaim your sovereignty. You have got to be able to seal all of the power leaks within your multi-dimensional body, where you are either giving your power away to those external authority figures, or where they have hooked in and are siphoning off your power. So even right now, in terms of our own personal ascension, in terms of the ascension of humanity as a whole, this Venus synodic cycle of the Capricorn goddess is absolutely speaking to that. And we're seeing more and more people as they're waking up to the truth of who they are.
Yes.
The truth that we are divine and we are human, that they can take back their power and reclaim their sovereignty.
Yes. And I call our heart, our sacred heart, our inner GPS. It's our inner guidance system. And I call it our ultimate resource, i.e. it reconnects you to source and you receive from source. So it's like this constant infinity symbol where we're always connected. We just have to check in, and then we instantly access when we're attuned and in the right frequency, obviously.
You're absolutely right, Caroline. That's a beautiful analogy to use about how we can rely on this heart space to facilitate as we navigate this life. Because one of the ways I have found to determine whether I'm in my heart space or if I've somehow been kind of kicked off balance and I'm kind of out of my heart space is I ask myself, am I looking for obstacles or am I looking for magic? And as soon as you ask, am I looking for obstacles or am I looking for magic? The natural inclination is, I want to experience magic. And that brings you right into your heart space.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Am I expanded or contracted? Am I negative or positive?
Right.
It's very simple to ask these questions. For us to check in. It doesn't, it doesn't take a long time, just one question.
Right. Am I feeling like the shackles are on, or am I feeling like the shackles are off? Lots of different ways that you can prompt yourself. Self-assess, beautiful word. And it's different for everybody. I was just having a conversation with the woman who owns the herd of horses that I sponsor a horse through. We were just talking yesterday how each person has a way in which they're able to let go, surrender, and how one way works for her, but for me, it was a different way. For her, she looks at, how can I give control of this over to a higher power to take care of? And I said, I tried that for years. I'm too much of a control freak. It didn't work for me. So what I found that worked for me is, okay, how can I make peace with this? How can I feel at peace with this? And for me, then if I can make peace with this, then it doesn't need to be fixed. I don't have to fix it. I don't have to give it to somebody else to fix. I'm okay with it. It's okay. I can move. So it's just another example how every person has their own way, their own unique way, and how to do these things that feels right to them, feels natural to them.
And that's where we're shifting from the knowing and having to rationally understand and see something to the inner guidance and that sensing within the body, within our intuitive powers and through the heart. But we've digressed.
It's okay.
Just thinking about, we could talk forever.
Yeah, it's and
Well,
it all
tell
ties
us
together.
about it. It always does beautifully. But tell us about your wonderful the New Galactic Earth project.
So we're at this stage now where we've completed. In the first stage, it was all about installing the rose gold Christos Sophia light codes in these Venus temples around the planet. And we've installed those light codes.
I don't think, can we just go back a bit, because I don't think we've really covered that for the audience. So
Okay.
so when you were tasked or given this opportunity to carry this out, what did it involve?
So the first step was at each monthly Venus gate activation, we were going to install the incoming rose gold Christos Sophia light codes into Venus temples that are located around the globe. And so how do we know when a Venus gate activation is happening? It's when Venus and the moon comes together in the sky.
Okay.
And I
that
mentioned
happens once a month,
that during
typically.
the descent phase, that morning star phase of the Venus of the Venus synodic cycle, yes, once a month. It will happen either 7 or 8 times. It's different. And then when we go into the ascent phase, then we begin to have these gate activations again, where Venus and the moon come together. And again, if it's been 7 down, it'll be 7 up. If it's 8 down, it'll be 8 up. We did have 8 gate activations. And because it's the descent journey, what happens is that the first gate activation activates the crown chakra. And then the second gate activates the third eye chakra. The third gate activates the throat chakra, and so forth and so on until we get down to that 7th gate, which is the root chakra. And if there's an 8th gate activation, it activates the earth star chakra. So we activated from the crown chakra down to the earth star chakra from January through August, 1 each month. And each month we focused on a specific Venus temple that we installed through an etheric journey, a ceremony to install these Christos Sophia light codes in those Venus temples. So we've completed that part. The 8 temples have the light codes. So now the next part starts in the second phase, the Inanna underworld phase. And it's amazing that tomorrow, actually, September 14th, is the day that Venus is descending into the Inanna underworld to begin that second phase. And then about halfway through, because remember, this is a shamanic death and rebirth experience. About halfway through, we have what's called the resurrection point. And the resurrection point is signaled by when Venus and the sun come together in the sky. That's the resurrection point. And so on that day, which will be October 22nd, and everybody is invited to join us.
Yes.
We're going to come together and we are going to, again, you know, through the inner planes and the etheric realm, we're going to link up all of the 8 Venus temples that we've installed these light codes in. And once we link up all of these Venus temples, we're going to bring them online. And when we bring them online, we are bringing online the new Earth light grid. Wow. Now, this new Earth light grid exists in the quantum field.
Yeah.
And as it's like a bridge, because you know, the new Earth, the 5 density Earth, it's already here. It's a matter of whether or not your frequency is high enough to experience it.
Yes.
And so this new Earth light grid is the bridge that's going to facilitate people's ability to raise their frequencies and be able to start experiencing this 5D new Earth that is already right here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful. So that's the big piece about the resurrection point, getting that new Earth light grid online. And then what we will be doing through the rest of the Venus synodic cycle is we're going to be activating the 12 strands of DNA. So at that resurrection point, we're going to be activating the third strand of DNA. And really, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be repairing, because what's happened is, while in our physical bodies, those other 10 strands of DNA have been, let's say, switched off or maybe disconnected, unpaired, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those strands of DNA still exist in the quantum, in our own personal divine template. So we are actually repairing, hooking them up again, the DNA strand that's in our physical body with the DNA that's in the quantum field that's in our divine template. We're repairing them. And once they're repaired, reconnected, reactivating them.
Wow.
So that's what we're doing. We're going to be using quantum crystal technology to link up the Venus temples, bring that new Earth light grid online, and using that same quantum crystal technology to help us to repair each strand of DNA and reactivate each strand of DNA. So I'm sorry. So this whole process is going to take us through August of next year.
Yeah, wonderful. That's just truly amazing. So just to clarify, when you talk about doing the repairing and activating the DNA, you have very generously invited others to be part of this activations, each of these activation ceremonies. And on each occasion, I believe each person's DNA is then or a different strand is activated, but those people carry the light that goes out into mass consciousness to support the rest of humanity, repairing their DNA too and activating. Is that correct?
Yes. And so what's important to remember is, again, it's a holographic cosmos.
Yeah.
So it's happening, whether people consciously engage it or not. It's happening. And we know with quantum physics that once you begin to look at something from a specific perspective, a specific point of view, then that's what starts to show up in your reality.
Yeah.
So the potency of this alchemical change happens when you choose to consciously engage, when you choose to show up for these ceremonies and engage in these ceremonies. And then on a separate level, to take it even another step further, or as Emerald the chef says, bam, kick it up a notch, right? What I offer are individual readings. When we were activating the Venus temples, I was providing light code readings so that the people that were participating could understand and have a clear awareness of the light codes that they were personally contributing to those Venus temples as a sacred gift to humanity. Kicking it up a notch, amplifying.
Yes. Yeah.
Amplifying your frequency. And so as we start to repair the DNA, I will also be offering DNA activation readings so that people can understand just exactly what's transpiring for them personally in terms of what evolutionary unfolding is happening within them as a part of having consciously engaged in that repair and reactivation process.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. And this is one of the reasons you are a perfect heart-led pioneer in terms of your gift to humanity and your appreciation and understanding of what's happening on the etheric level. And tell us some of the places where some of these Venus temples are and that you've worked with already and activated.
Yes. Well, of course, the Renler Chateau Venus Landscape Temple, right? Where it all began.
Yeah.
And I knew when I left France that I was going to have to go to all of these Venus temples. In my mind, though, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to have to physically travel to each one of these Venus temples around the world, and was already preparing in January, when I received that message from the Cosmic Sophia, I had already been prepared for a year to travel to Sedona, where one of the Venus temples is, to activate it there in physicality. But then, of course, then what happened? The whole shutdown came, couldn't make. But what happened with that is then it opened up the space in my mind to receive the information from Sophia, that I didn't need to physically travel to each one of those temples, that I could travel etherically, which is how it unfolded. So there's the one at Rennes-le-Château, Sedona, I mentioned. There's one in Egypt near Alexandria. There's one in Turkey on Mount Arafat. There is one in the Canary Islands. There's one in Hawaii. There's one in New Orleans, which was a previously forgotten Venus temple that one of my priestess sisters and I rediscovered. It was revealed to us after we had already started this process of activating Venus temples. And I'm thinking, but I only have information about 7. There's 8 activations. Where's the 8th Venus temple? It was revealed in New Orleans. And so can't remember. I know I've missed a couple, but it's on my website where they're
yes. I'm sorry. My brain is a little lacking at this time of night as well. But that's perfect. I think it's nice for people to appreciate the breadth of, where all these different temples exist.
Absolutely, because it is a global project. Bringing humanity back into that global community so that we can step into the galactic community, which is why it's called the Galactic New Earth Project. And because we go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. It's just that we tend to forget, we're so insular in our planet and thinking about it's a planet. This is it.
Right.
We forget about our cosmological relations and associations in universes and galaxies beyond.
Exactly, which is a beautiful tie into what I was going to share is my own galactic heritage is Arcturian and Pleiadian. And so at each one of these Venus temple activations, there have been a contingency of Arcturians and Pleiadians that agreed to support and participate in this project that have been showing up at each of the temple activations and will continue to show up as we go to each of the temples again to repair and reactivate the DNA strands.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. So what would you like people to know about what's next, and if they wish to participate, how they can participate?
Okay, well, the next big thing on the horizon is the resurrection point on October 22nd, where we're going to be linking up the Venus temples, bringing that new Earth light grid online, and start with the first strand, the 3rd strand of DNA that's going to be repaired and reactivated. So if you'd like to participate in that, you can go to my website, goldenraycenter.com, and just subscribe to the newsletter. We do all of this via Zoom, and the Zoom links I send out through my newsletter. Initially, I tried to allow the Zoom links to be out there in the public space and on social media. But of course, the dark forces quickly swooped in and we had to shut that down. So now the invitations are by invitation only. So if, like, for instance, Caroline, if you're on my mailing list, you get the link to the activation. If you want to send it on to your network, that's fine. I just don't want any of that, the links to be posted on social media. But to be able to receive the link, you've got to subscribe to my newsletter. And in the meantime, it's important to remember that there is no time. Time is a construct of this 3rd density Earth. And so everything is always happening in the eternal now. And while, yes, in January, we did a temple activation and a different one in February and so forth through August, you can still go to my YouTube channel, The Rose Wheel Mystery School. I have a playlist for the Galactic New Earth Project. I think it's GNEP, because that's kind of a long title. And you can do a replay of each of those temple activations, and you can contribute your own light codes to those Venus temples.
It's wonderful. Yeah.
And you'll hear that even in the opening of the sacred space, we've already called everybody in. So when you show up which is in divine timing, right? You haven't missed out on anything.
Yeah.
When you show up and you participate, it's just as potent as if you had been physically present with us at that particular marker in time when we did the activation.
Yeah, absolutely perfect. Wow. So much happening, so much happening, so much to come. Yes. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience about anything else that you offer, or anything else that you're involved with that might be of interest to them? Oh, and of course, and this I'm springing on you because because of my technical challenges before we connected. I'd love you to, and my battery is also showing very low. So very quickly, any parting thoughts that you might like to share about how people can start operating more fully from their heart on a daily basis?
So
as New Earth creators,
the breath. Yeah. I use the breath. I'm a certified breath practitioner, and the breath is your direct connection to spirit. It's like the umbilical cord, right? To your mother in your womb. The breath is your umbilical cord, your connection to spirit. So the moment you just pause, I mean, you can be driving in traffic and stopped at a light, and you bring your awareness to your breath. Is it coming in? Is it going out? That immediately brings you into your heart space.
It's having great effect here.
Yes. Yes. That's right.
I think they're all saying that bar on your low battery looks very low. We might need to wrap it up rather quickly. So I really want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart and my sacred heart for all the work that you're doing and your presence in my life, because you've been an absolute, truly divine gift. And I will post all the links to your work in the comments below this video. And for those who have enjoyed this conversation and are viewing it on YouTube, I'd like to ask you, if you'd like to watch more conversations with Heart-Led Pioneers, please press the subscribe button and the notification so you don't miss any future conversations. There will be a few more regularly coming out now. There's been a bit of hiatus. And to everybody else, I just want to say a huge heartfelt thank you for being present with us today and witnessing this beautiful being, Sophia Mona Lisa, and her amazing work. So I'm sending enormous love to everybody. And thank you so much, Sophia Mona Lisa.
Thank you so much. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.